Real quick, think of the greatest quarterback seasons in NFL history. Tom Brady in 2007, Dan Marino in 1984, Peyton Manning in 2013. All spectacular displays of aerial dominance that endured the ups and downs of a 16-game schedule. Now, think of the opposite. The seasons that were so spectacularly bad that their only achievement is managing to stay on the field long enough to stack the abysmal numbers required to be mentioned on my goddamn list. And the absolute worst of them are coming up right after this. Here's the only criteria. To make it onto this list, the quarterback has to have played in at least 9 games, giving us a big enough sample size to be sure that, yes, they were apocalyptically bad for one season. Sorry, fans of the GOAT, he's not on the list. Before he was a Dilf winning Super Bowls on the back of an all-time defense, Trent Dilfer was diming it up in Tampa with the Bucks. Believe it or not, Dilfer made a Pro Bowl as a Tampa signal caller in 1997. It's even more unbelievable that he made it to 1997 given the season he had 2 years before. In 1995, his second year in the NFL, Trent Dilfer had himself a rough 16 games, throwing just 4 touchdowns and a grand total of 18 interceptions. I'm not sure what's more impressive, only throwing 4 touchdowns in a full season or not getting benched in the process. Tampa still managed to win 7 games that year, mostly on the strength of a solid running game. Dilf added a couple touchdowns on the ground, and a strong young defense anchored by Derek Brooks, John Lynch, and Warren Sapp that ranked 12th in points allowed. Give credit to Dilfer though, to be unshaken by that bad of a season and return stronger than ever, finally figuring out in 1997 to the tune of 21 touchdowns, just 11 picks, and a Pro Bowl nod in the process of securing a 10-6 record. That's impressive. That Bucks team went on to win it all 7 years later, but somehow it was Dilfer that got a ring first, riding the coattails of the 2000 Ravens defense in a season that was mediocre by all standards, but looked like 2007 Brady compared to his 95 campaign. Ever hear of Buffalo Bills quarterback Gary Maranyi? Didn't think so. That's because his 1976 season was so utterly terrible that everyone within a 100-mile radius of the Finger Lakes swore never to speak his name again. To be fair to Maranyi, he wasn't supposed to be the starter. Joe Ferguson, who was off to a great start, got hurt, and the third rounder out of Boston College had to answer the call. The call was dropped, and Maranyi led the Bills to 7 losses in his 7 starts. He completed just 35% of his passes, threw 7 touchdowns to 16 picks, and failed to hit the 1,000-yard mark despite throwing the ball 232 times. A lot of the quarterbacks on this list never had much to work with on offense, but here's the thing. Maranyi was handing the ball off to O.J. Simpson, who slashed through the defense for 1,500 yards in 76. Still, a 14-game season. The juice was their only offense, and that was especially apparent on a Thanksgiving Day game in Detroit, where Simpson carved up the defense for 258 more rushing yards than Maranyi had passing yards. Buffalo limped their way to the finish line with a 2-12 record, thanks to Gary Maranyi constantly shooting the team in the foot. So I know the title is NFL QBs, but this college quarterback season had to be on this list. Sitkowski? More like Arthur Shitkowski if you ask me. Arthur sit on the bench Kowski. Arthur makes me Sitkowski. Alright, you get the idea. Or do you, Arthur Suckowski? Anyone? Is this thing on? The Rutgers quarterback obviously isn't playing at a pro level, but we had to make an exception after seeing just how badly he got torn to shreds in the Big Ten during his freshman go-round. Sitkowski played in 11 games in 2018 and put up some truly atrocious numbers. 49% completions, 4.2 yards per attempt, 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 18 picks. Also kind of impressive, he won the job going into 2019. The freshman out of IMG Academy went just 1-10 in his 11 starts, with the one victory coming against Texas State, a game in which he threw 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. To make things worse, he finished the season with a minus 66 rushing yards on 22 attempts. That includes sacks in college, but his best rushing performance was just 3 attempts for 9 yards. Want to scare Broncos fans? Tell him Sitkowski's stats and then mention that he's 6'5" and looks good in a suit. Matt Schaub was a Pro Bowler, a 4,000-yard passer, and a bald icon before the wheels fell off in 2013. After starting the season 2-0 following up 2 straight playoff seasons in Houston, Schaub developed a mental block in his game, much like Rick Ankiel hitting the backstop from the mound. The only problem is that it was a little more costly. He kept throwing touchdowns to the other team. Schaub's numbers certainly were not as bad as some of the other QBs on this list. 10 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, 6.5 yards per attempt, and 230 yards per game. But what lands him on this list is the fact that he broke an inauspicious record. Schaub threw a pick 6 in 4 consecutive games. If not for an injury, he might have been able to extend that streak to 5 games. Fortunately, Schaub's backup, TJ Yates of hell, entered to throw another pick 6 and make the team's total streak 5 games. It truly takes a village. The sad part is that the once prolific passer was never the same. Schaub landed in Oakland a year later and lost the job in camp to Derek Carr before ultimately finding his niche as Matt Ryan's backup in Atlanta. This time, the Schaub was finally stumped. Before we get to our number 1, here are some honorable mentions. Dick Wood had a boner of a season in 1966, Miami's first year of existence. Joe Namath once said, "Hey, I'm gonna throw 4 more times more picks than touchdowns. I guarantee it." I double dog dare you to throw it to the wrong team. And as for an entire career, Kim Quilkin of the Atlanta Falcons' body of work makes him the most gene-spliced QB laucow of them all. In 26 career games, he threw 4 TDs to 29 picks, a 39.7 completion percentage, a 17.9 QBR, and he took 2 more sacks than he threw picks at 31. It's bad enough he had to be teased for being named Kim. And now, without further ado, the worst quarterback season of all time. How can you talk about bad quarterbacks without evoking the name of the 1998 second overall pick, Ryan Leaf? And although we're happy he's turned his life around, there's no hiding from the fact that his rookie year is one of the worst quarterback seasons ever. Things started on a good note. The Chargers won their first 2 games under Leaf, with the Rook playing understated complimentary football. Then in week 3 against the Chiefs, Leaf imploded. 1 completion in his 15 attempts, 4 yards, 2 interceptions, and 4 fumbles. Leaf only made it through 10 games before he was benched, but during that time he managed just 2 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, 45% completions, and just 129 passing yards per game. An abysmal year by any standards, made worse by his poor work ethic, golfing during film sessions, throwing teammates under the bus, and of course, yelling at a reporter in the locker room like an angry Will Ferrell character. To make matters worse for San Diego, Leafs replacement Craig Willihan put up 8 touchdowns and 19 picks in relief. He was so bad they had no choice but to go back to Leaf in 2000. And of course, the quarterback selected 1 pick before him, well, he's broken just about every record ever. Leaf is almost certainly the biggest bust of all time, even in a universe that includes Jamarcus Russell, Paxton Lynch, and Vernon Gholston. Second in the draft, first on this list.